Hello, everyone. Welcome to new gameplay today. My name is Marcus Stewart. I have Wesley LeBlanc here. Hello.
What are you going to do with that
Hi.
sword?
Hello, Marcus. I'm in your head.
I was like, what is happening? Yes, voices and heads is what this game is all about, because this is Senua Sacrifice: Hellblade 2, which is the sequel to Hellblade: Senua's... Wait, no, I got the name wrong. This is Senua Saga Hellblade 2. The first game is called Hellblade: Senua Sacrifice. Not confusing names at all.
No, not at all. It is an interesting change.
Yeah, it is. We're looking at the first real fight of the game, or really actually the first fight in general. This is really early in the game. And yeah, for this video, because I think this game kind of benefits from, like, because it's such a story heavy game, not seeing too much. We're gonna jump around to some different sections of the game, kind of out of context. As you're listening, the game is already out now. You can play it, on Xbox Game Pass and all that good stuff. But yeah, my review is live on the site. At the time that I'm recording, I don't have a score decided, but you can go read it to find out. But I will say that I enjoyed the game. I was a fan of the first Hellblade, but it was one of those games that had, like, a lot of problems, but, like, the swings that it took and sort of the artistic direction of it, I think, kind of carried it over the finish line, in spite of, like, some repetitive gameplay and maybe some repetitive and not always fun puzzle solving. And I think this game kind of, it remedies some of the issues that I had with the first game. So we're seeing the combat here, and as you can see, it's very similar to the first game in terms of, like, it's very intimate. You're always fighting one person. But what I like about it here is that, on top of it just looking incredibly cinematic, and in general, this game is maybe one of the best looking games I've ever played.
I would say probably the best. Like, at least from, like, a realistic art style standpoint, it is stunning. Like, probably the most next gen feeling game, even though we're like 4 years into this console cycle.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous. I use photo mode so often that I might have ruined the pace of big story moments for myself because I just couldn't help it.
Yeah, the transitions, like, you're seeing it during this fight when you, like, block, or, like, you're always wondering, like, okay, this is like I guess a cutscene, but can I still interact with it? And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't, and it's always blurring that line. But it is just the way everything's framed, and like you mentioned, like the facial expressions, which is Ninja Theory's facial tech has always been, like, top notch, and, like, going all the way back to Heavenly Sword. But yeah, it really shines here. Like, and it gets even better when you see multiple enemies and the transitions they do when they bring in the next enemy. But yeah, the combat, what I like about it is that it's still the same sort of, like, dodge parry system and building up your focus meter, which you don't have at this point in the game. But they got rid of the blindsiding that would happen in the first game. Like, if you remember, Wes, there was a lot of times enemies would attack you off screen, and you would have to rely on the voices to warn you. That is gone in this game, thankfully. So the voices are less of a they're less of a gameplay mechanic in this game in general, and they're much more of just a storytelling flourish, which I appreciate.
100%, yeah. They're not even really trying to, like, mislead you much, or, I mean, they, like, make fun of you or tell you you're doing something wrong, but, like, if you didn't listen to them, you would still get through the game just fine from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah, and what I also like is that if you die in this game, that weird, like, permadeath, like, creeping thing from the first game. Remember, the rot would travel from her arm to her head, and if you died too many times, the game threatened to wipe your save data. That is not a thing in this game. Which I don't think
dying in this game.
What are we gonna say?
Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna say, like,
dying in this game is, like, not. It doesn't happen often. There are moments where, like, you can insta die just because of the story, but the game is very generous in letting you recover and get back up, especially in combat. Like, as long as you're paying attention, the game gives you a lot of ways to not die.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the combat in general just feels really good. And even though it does get, like, repetitive sometimes, it was always fun just because of, like, I think the parry timing and stuff feels good. And it's just fun to watch, just like we mentioned before.
It's so cinematic. This will sound more negative. It's not meant to be at all, but, like, the combat often does feel like playable cutscenes, which is sometimes a con in other games, but for here it's me speaking to just how visually gorgeous it is. Like, it is so cinematic. like it's like being a part of a movie, and you just happen to be pressing buttons on a controller. It's something special for sure in that regard.
So we're looking at a more exploration focused section here. Again, this is pretty early on in the game. Like the first game, you're going to be traveling to a bunch of different locations and solving puzzles. What I like about this game is that the bulk of the first game was you were doing a lot of the same sort of puzzle solving with the perspective puzzles. And there is some of that in this game, and we're going to see the first instance of that here. But this game has a lot, or has more puzzle variety than the first one. Like, you're not doing these sort of like, match the symbol with the environment nearly as often as you were in the first game. And they spread them out enough to when they do pop up again, it feels more fresh of like, oh, I don't mind doing this, like, because it's been like an hour since I last did it. Whereas in the first game, you're like, okay, got to do this again after I did like 3 in a row, Yeah,
the puzzles in general are a lot. I don't know. I haven't played Hellblade since around launch, maybe, but it feels a lot more sparse in a good way. Like, the puzzles matter a lot when you get to them, but like you're not doing puzzles but once or twice, maybe every hour you play. Which I don't know. I remember the first Hellblade having just like so many puzzles. Yeah,
I think the game, like, not only it's just a little bit more variety, but I do think the new puzzles they introduce are genuinely pretty fun and also kind of fitting the game sort of aesthetic, like trippy. And one thing I was pleasantly surprised with this game, or maybe, I don't know if maybe surprise is the word, but like it was nice to see is that, the first game was famously like an indie game, really. Like, it was a very nice looking indie game, but it was made on a very like limited budget, and so it kind of forced the team to get creative with like, how do we make something that looks visually stunning while still using some pretty thrifty tricks to make it stand out, with like the use of mixed media and stuff in the first game. And I like that this game still has some of that spirit, even though Ninja Theory is now owned by like a bottomless money pit in Microsoft, and presumably had more of a budget with this game, but like the game hasn't lost its like visual like artistry at all. Like, there's some really cool looking moments when they mess around with like lighting and even some like perspective stuff and like some like kaleidoscopic effects to kind of like not only highlight the sort of like what's going on in Senua's head, but also just the genuine fantastical stuff that is happening around her at almost all times. And even just like that stuff, like everything in this game just looks really cool and like thoughtful in a way that it feels unique to this game, and not, it's not just like, oh, this is just like a nice looking game. Like, this is like a very like interesting looking game too.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's a feast for the eyes. That might be my biggest takeaway with the game. Not to say that the rest of it's not fun, but if in 10 years when I'm talking about Hellblade 2, it's going to be the visual artistry on screen by Ninja Theory. It's something else.
Yeah, and this footage is from Xbox Series X for those curious about it, because it's a Series X and PC exclusive there. We're jumping ahead here. It's when you get the mirror for the first time, which of course the mirror is your basically the thing you use to build up your focus in combat, where you can, if you land enough hits, you can slow down time and basically just get free hits in like unimpeded. Again, we're seeing some of that. Again, the cool sort of presentational touches in the game. Another thing that stands out, and this was true with the first game, was just the performances were really strong. Like Melina Juergens does another fantastic job as Senua, just performance-wise, and just like her facials and stuff like that. Like the times they zoom in on her face and you just see her eyes darting all over the place, or just like subtle things like her lip quivering. It's like, it just goes a long way in just selling Senua as a real person. And in general, I think I've been thinking about this of like, do I like the story more than I do the first game? Because I really do like the first game's story, and I want to say in some ways yes. One big thing with this game that separates it from the first game is that there's a bigger focus on companionship, because now Senua at different points in the story is traveling with other people, whereas the first game it was solitary. Like, she really only had the voices, and the only other character that you kind of saw was her mentor guy, whose name I forgot about, but you saw his face constantly. And you hear him again at certain like secrets that you find here. But I like the angle of seeing her apply the sort of lessons that she learned about herself from the first game and using that to try to help other people instead of just figuring out her own stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know which one I like more from a story perspective. I think Senua's Saga, in ways that surprised me, was a lot more maybe a separate or isolated story from, I don't know, like it's not like the first game really set up this universe. This just feels like another, okay, we're just living through another aspect of Senua's life, less of like a continuation from like the actual narrative happening on screen. Of course, the psychological stuff is still very much a continuation, but what they do into and like what the main focus is, which I won't spoil here, it makes for some really awesome set pieces, and some of probably like it's just, I don't know. I don't even want to say because I don't want to spoil anything, but like it's worth playing. This is a shorter game, and there's some moments in here that are just like awe-inspiring to watch play out on screen. They do some really, really cool stuff with Norse mythology, and yeah, I won't say too much more than that.
Yeah, and I said this in my review that I've always been of the opinion that the first Hellblade is a game that I did not need a sequel to. Like, I felt like it told a very complete, self-contained story, and it ended on like a satisfying note where like the adventure was resolved. Like the journey that she went on, she got what she was looking for, and I was like, okay, I'm happy with where this ended. And I think this game justifies itself by sort of taking what Senua learned in that game, and now she, like I mentioned before, having to look after other people for the first time, and also still, you know, revisiting and having to battle some of the trauma she faced in the first game, which I actually like, because that's just true to life of like, yeah, you know, you learn lessons about yourself, but there's still going to be times where you kind of have to check yourself a bit, and those old doubts that you thought that you had squashed come back up. But now, you know, she's not alone this time, you know, like now she has other people to sort of like help her face the thing that she conquered alone the first time around. And I think some of my favorite moments of the story are when they do get into, you know, the interactions she has with others and their own traumas and seeing how she deals with that. But yeah, as we start to
also play this game with headphones. Goes without saying, if you've heard anything about Hellblade, you know to play with headphones, but seriously, make sure you play with headphones.
Yeah, like the game pretty much just tells you straight up like, hey, you know, 3D audio, which it does make a huge difference. Like I played the entire game with headphones, and just, you know, the voices and just even some of the enemies, like the sound design in this game is top notch. And I think you would be doing yourself a disservice to not play with headphones. But yeah, like I said, Hellblade Senua, or oh gosh, I'm never going to get the title right. Senua Saga, Hellblade 2. Available as of today on Xbox Series X and PC. It's on the Xbox Game Pass. You can check out my review now. Like I said, at the time of recording, I don't have a score, but I really do like this game. I think it's worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of the first game. And yeah, I'm excited to see what other people think about it, because it's one of those games I've already found myself like thinking about just the stories and some of the moments after it's wrapped up. And yeah, that wraps up this episode of New Gameplay Today. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you on the next time.